Welcome back. In the last video, we finished setting up the club's rules and permissions. At this point, the system knows how the club operates. But for many clubs joining Fundify, there is already a history, months or years of contributions, loans, income, and expenses. In this video, I'm going to show you how to bring that history into the platform so that the club's records are complete and the reports and finances reflect the full picture from day one. You'll notice that right now the dashboard and finances sections look relatively empty. This is my dashboard and the finances. Expenses is blank, income blank, no investments. So this is expected. The system has all the rules configured but no transaction history yet. Once the input is done, these sections will start reflecting the club's actual financial position. So where do we find the input tools? There are two places to access the input tools. The first is directly on the admin dashboard where there is an input data shortcut, and that's here. The second is through settings under data migration. That's here, data migration. Either way, the process is the same. So when you click on data migration in settings, you're prompted to make a decision. Do you want to bring in your full history or do you want to start afresh from today? This is option 1 of we have records from day 1 or we are starting partway through. Option 1 is a full historical input. This is what we are going to do in this video. The Compounders Investment Club has detailed records going back to 2022, and we want all of that inside the platform. With a full input, you'll be able to get the complete picture behind every number. You can see exactly which member contributed in which month and which months they missed. You can pull up a specific year and see the club's income, expenses, and net position for that period. Each loan has its own record: who borrowed when, how much, and what interest was earned. You can generate year-by-year reports going all the way back to 2022 for the Compounders Investment Club's case, and not just from the date the club joined the platform, which was a couple of days ago. Option 2, which is we are starting partway through, is to start from a clean slate. Some clubs may not import old records. Perhaps the historical data is incomplete, inconsistent, or simply not worth the effort to reconstruct. In that case, the club agrees on a starting point and enters opening balances that match the current totals from the spreadsheet. Total savings per member, any outstanding loans, the cash position, and so on. The numbers will still be correct. What the club will lose out on is the detail behind them. There will be no month-by-month contribution history, no individual loan records for previous years, and no way to filter a report back to say 2022 and see what actually happened. The platform knows where the club stands today, but not how it got there. For clubs that are comfortable keeping their old spreadsheets as an archive and only need the platform going forward, this is a perfectly reasonable way to start. As mentioned earlier, the Compounders Investment Club is going with a full historical import. So I'm going to change approach and go back to option 1. Import data. Here we see that we have 4 categories to bring in: contributions, loans, income, and expenses. And let's start with contributions since they form the foundation of everything else. I'll select the contributions input option. The system gives me 2 ways to get the data in. I can either upload a file or I can paste data directly from a spreadsheet. Let me show you both. But before I start importing my data, I need to think about how it's currently organized. Some clubs keep their records month by month, a separate sheet or table for each month, while others organize by year, with all the 12 months for all members in one place. The import tool for Fundify supports both. If your data is organized monthly, you could import 1 month at a time. If it's organized yearly, you can bring in all 12 months for all members in a single file. So this is the option for monthly and this is the option for yearly. For the Compounders Investment Club, the data is organized by year, and so we are going to go with the yearly option. Also, it's much faster than uploading 12 separate files for each year. So I'm going to take you through first the upload option. There is a downloadable template available right at the bottom, and I would recommend using it if you're preparing your data for the first time. The template gives you the exact columns the system expects in the correct order. Things like the member's email address, the contribution amount, the period the contribution belongs to, and the date it was received. Let me download it and we have a look. So as you can see, we have member name, member email, amount, year, status. Member email address is important because that's how the system knows which record belongs to which person. Just a name is not enough. Different people may have similar names, but email addresses are unique. This is why each member should have joined using their own unique email address so that the data always matches up correctly. Status is either approved or pending. A pending status is a payment that a member has claimed to have made but has not been approved by either the treasurer or the admin, depending on your roles and permissions. For imported data, most transactions are likely to be approved, but the pending option is there just in case. Another thing to take note of is the date format. The system expects dates in the format that you've specified here in this section. So I'm going to pick this format. And if your spreadsheet uses a different one than the one selected here, the previous step will flag it before anything is committed, and you have to correct in that stage. But it's easier to fix it at this stage before pasting or before uploading. I'm going to start by uploading the 2022 contributions file. I'll click Browse Files and I'll select 10 data rows have been loaded successfully, and then map. Where the system maps it to each member, and then it will ask me to look at the data in a preview. And so if any of your data has issues, this is where you'd be asked to correct it. And if an email address doesn't match the email addresses we have in the system, yeah. And then we can match members before we move on to the monthly status step. This is where the system does something important. It evaluates each month for every member against the club's contribution rules. Each month gets a status. A contribution made on time is marked as paid. A contribution made after the deadline is marked as late. A month with no contribution at all is marked as missed. And for late months, we use yellow, and for the missed months, we use red. So starting from Precious, we can see that she was late. She has 605,000 against our expected total of 600,000. Remember, The contribution mode for Compounders Investment Club is a fixed monthly deposit of 50,000 per month with a fine rate of 10% per month. So the month, according to our record, that she was late for is March. Stella is 600,000, matching the expected monthly contribution. Annabelle is 20,000, showing that she was late for 4 months. According to our record, it was September, October, November, December. And I'll mark everyone's late contribution according to the record. And then our total is 115,000. It matches what I have on record of the fines. And then I'll review and import. Import 120 contributions plus 23 fines. That's fine. And then import complete. So when we were starting, our cash balance was 0. Now that we've brought in contributions, our cash increases. I'll speak more on cash later, but it's this figure gives us an insight of the transactions happening in the club. Because we've brought in some fines along with the contributions, the club has earned some income already in 2022 according to the system. And we'll see that reflected in our income, which is in finances and income. So we have fines for 2022. And yeah, once I'm satisfied with the input, I can move on to 2023. So I'll go back. I'll use the shortcut on the dashboard and then contributions and yearly date format. And I'm going to go with the pasting option. So the data for 2023 is this. And then I'll paste, and then I'll pass and map column, and it will ask me to look at the preview. Everything looks fine. So I'll match members and then mark the monthly status. So when I come here, we can see that there are some people who have been flagged red, and they're being flagged red because their total amount against their names is less than the expected 600,000 yearly total. So let's start with Annabelle. She has 560,000. According to our records, she missed the July payment. So I will mark this, but this is a late but paid month. Red is the missed month, so I move along to red, and it can show that now she has a fine of 5,000 with savings of 560,000. According to our record, the 10,000 is a fine, and that was for May and June. So I mark it as a late payment with a fine, and that puts Annabelle's contributions to 550,000, with our club earning an income of 10,000 and Annabelle missing 1 month in 2023. So I'll do the same for everyone else, and then we can move on to 2024. And that gives us a total of 200,000 for the fines. It matches the record, so I'll review and import, and then it prompts me to confirm. I'll confirm. And so our cash and our total value has grown because we brought in more contributions for 2023. So I'll move on to 2024. And assuming that in between 2023 and 2024, the club decided to change its financial rules, let's say the fine is no longer 10%, it's now 5%. You can opt out of the 10% to the 5%. And before you import, Otherwise, it will, when you import, the system will assume 10% because that's what you have. So I'll change to 5% and save the financial rules, and then move on to data import. Import data, contributions, yearly, and paste. And preview data and match members. Then I'm prompted to fill in the monthly status. So we can check out Precious now. So if we say that Precious paid for January late, right now the fine will be 2,500 because the club reduced its fine percentage rate. And so she's late for January, Feb, and then to make a total of 20,000. I want us to take a look at Juanita Mganga, who has been flagged red. So she has a total of 327,000 less than the expected 600,000 according to the club rules. So that means that she did pay for some months. But then we see that if she paid for 6 months, then she is left with 27,000. The 27,000 is not a multiple of 2,500, so it all can't be allocated to fines. So I'll check my record. And according to the record, Joanita didn't pay for August through to December. And for here, she paid January to June, she paid, but she paid late. And then that gives us a total of 312,000. So for July, we can also flag it that she didn't pay, even if she paid 12,000 for July. So she has a total savings of 312,000 and 15,000 in fines. So I'll go through everyone's fines before we can move on to 2025. And as you can see, people have missed fines for missed payments, but because they are ended and they hadn't yet made the payment, the fines are waived, or the fines are not considered because in our settings we chose that fines expire at the end of the year. So review and import. Again, income will increase, and then cash and total value also grow. Lastly, let's move on to 2025. And then we can import the data for this year, which is 2026. And again, assuming that the club has moved on from the fixed monthly contribution and it's now doing a minimum monthly contribution. For that to reflect as we import, I have to change the financial rules first and then go to minimum monthly. I'll be asked for the amount, which is 50,000. And overpayment policy, if someone overpays, do we carry it forward or we say that they have paid for that month? I will say that they have paid for that month, it's not carried forward. And then if someone pays 100,000 in January, all of it is marked against January. And then save financial rules, and then import. So import contributions yearly. So these are the people who are paid for 2026 as of 31st March. So some members have been flagged red, and that's Shanita and Precious. Their totals are less than the expected 150,000 for 3 months, and Shanita has 100,000 while Precious has 105,000. So I'll start with Shanita, and we can say that she paid for Jan, Feb, but she hasn't yet paid for March. And for Precious, she paid for Jan and Feb late, but she hasn't yet paid for March. And so we can review and import. So this is the total value of the club. Right now it's from contributions and fines. So we will move on to loans. But before we move on to loans, I would like us to talk about cash right here. The cash is the thread that connects all our transactions. It's the cash balance represents the actual money the club holds at any given point in time. It's not the same as total savings. Savings reflect only what members have accumulated in their contributions, but cash reflects what is physically available after accounting for everything that has moved in and out. So, what basically increases our cash balance? Member contribution. Every time a member pays their monthly contribution, cash goes up. Loan repayments. When a member repays a loan, both the principal returned and the interest earned on top of it, cash increases. If a member pays a fine for a late contribution, that payment also goes into the club as income. Any other income entering the club, such as bank interest or unit trust income, will also increase the cash balance. So, what reduces the cash balance? Loan disbursements. When the club approves and releases a loan to a member, the club's cash reduces. Expenses. Expenses also reduce cash balance. Asset purchases also mean that money has left the club's hands. When a club buys a physical or financial asset, such as land, equipment, or a bond, that money is going out of the cash balance and into the asset. Member withdraws. If a member withdraws from the club, that means cash also reduces. So at any point in time, the cash balance tells you what the club actually has available to work with. Every import that we are going to do, loans, income, expenses, will move this number in one direction or the other. Keeping that in mind as we go through each category will help you understand why the figures look the way they do once everything is in the system. Next, we are going to import the loan history. And that's import data, loans. Again, I'll use the template to make sure that the data is formatted correctly. So I download the template and this template is slightly more detailed than the one for contributions because each loan has more moving parts: who borrowed, how much was borrowed, when it was disbursed, the interest structure, any repayments already made, and the outstanding balance at the time of importing. Key fields here include the member email, the loan product, the loan principal, the interest accrued, the total paid to date, the status, the disbursed date, the duration of the loan, and the last accrual date. The loan product can be either of the products put when setting the loan products in video 2, and the last accrual date is the date up to which interest was last calculated. If you're not sure of the exact date, use today's date. And the status is either active or repaid. An active loan is one where the member still has an outstanding balance. A repaid loan is one which has already been paid to zero. So I will copy this and paste. Again, take note of the date format. And then import. So when we import, we now see that we can see cash balances and then the outstanding loans in the club summary. And also the total value has increased because we've got some loan interest. The cash has also grown because we've got some loan interest. For loans that were already fully repaid before the import, those will come in as closed records. So if we are to go to loans and look at status, we have active. This is the 3 loans that we imported as active loans. The rest are going to be repaid. Those loans, the repaid loans contribute to a member's borrowing history and the club's loan interest income, but they won't appear as active obligations. The active loans that are still open at the time of import will carry forward. Any new payments made through the platform from this point will be recorded against those loans and the balances will update accordingly. When interest accrues going forward, the system will update it as accrued income automatically. So if we are to look at a member, let's look at Renita. So these are her contributions from 2022 to 2025. She has not yet made any contribution for 2026. And loans, she has 3 loans, 2 have been repaid and 1 is active. So if we want to see the summary of a loan, we can, let me go to the active loans, and that's Renita. And so it shows that she has a principal of 500,000, she has accrued interest of 51,250, and she has a balance of this in total. If we are to go to maybe someone who has paid something, and that is Annabelle. So this is her repayment progress so far. So this is how you can monitor, and as she pays down the loan, the bar will keep on going forward. So now that we've imported loans, we also have loan interest. Just like we had finance revenue, we also have loan interest, and we can see this in finances and income, all categories, and loan interest. So this is the loan interest that the club has earned so far. Moving on to income and expenses. Before we import income, there is one thing to do. I am going to head into the finances section and create the income categories that the club uses. First, let's look at the data for the club. So we have the template for income has category, amount, description, date, month, year. So my income items are other unit trust interest, dividend, interest on debt securities, and that's all. And for expenses, it's bank charges, mobile money, transport, brokerage fees, etc. So before I import any of this, I have to make sure that I have to make sure that the income items, I have to make sure that the income categories are already in the system. Otherwise, the previous stage, the system will flag it because it won't recognize it. So I'll go to the income in finances and create the income categories. So to create an income category, you record income, and then here, some of them are already built in, like dividend, investment interest, rental, capital gain, other. So if you have another one, then you should create it yourself. So I'm going to create unit, trust, interest, create unit, trust, interest, and I'm also going to create interest on debt securities. Dividend and other is already built in, so I don't have to create that. So after that, I will go and import income, take note of that date format, and then I'm going to go with paste because it's faster. And so income, this is income from 2022 to 2026. And then I'll record, I'll copy and paste. So preview, and then it matches to the categories that it already has, and review and import and import. So because the club has earned income, the cash balance has gone up, and that's 31,233,000. So let's do the same for expenses so that we can now see the cash going down. Before you import expenses, we'll also have to create the expenses categories just like we did for income. So the categories that are existing right now are meeting, admin, professional, bank charges, other. According to our data, the compounders investment clubs, these are their categories. Momo fees, brokerage fees, admin, transport, bank charges. Yeah, there is no other. I'll create the ones we don't have, which is Momo fees, transport, brokerage fees, and then we can import. So record expense, and then I'll do Momo fees, create, and brokerage fees, create, transport, create. So after that, I'll go back to import, and that's import data, expenses, paste data, take note of the date, and copy and paste. So everything is okay, and then we can review and import. So our cash has reduced from 31 to 30,888,000. Now that all the four categories have been imported, we can look at the changes that have happened. Let's start with finances. Here we can see that now there is data in the different items. For expenses, let's start with finances. We now see that there is data to the different items. We have our expenses, our income. We don't have investments yet, but for expenses, we can now sort them by category. For example, if I want to see how much the club has spent on brokerage fees, it can take me to the different expense items and their dates, the date of the expense. You can also sort and filter the income accordingly. So you can go to dividend, and then it will show you the income and the date that that income was earned. Let's move on to reports. This is where the value of option 1 becomes clear. Right now, the system has auto-generated a report of this year from January 1st, 2026 to April 5th, 2026. You can see the income, the expenses, and the net profit. You can also see the cash at hand. Because we've not yet logged our investments are zero, and the loan principal receivable is available, and the interest receivable is also available. This is the interest that has accrued on the loans but has not yet been paid. Our member deposits are our liabilities, and our retained earnings is our equity because we've not yet distributed any profits. That's a report for 2026. I'm going to generate a report for 2022, and that's here in the calendar. So let's go to 2022 to 2022, December 2022 first, 31st, and January 2022 31st. And that's it. So we earned only foreign revenue in 2022. This may not be the best example, so let's move on to, let's do last year's report. So last year's report shows you the income earned according to the different categories, and also the expenses according to the different categories, and then it generates the net profit for the different categories. Because we've not yet logged in our assets, it's not very detailed, but when we do the full picture, you'll now be able to see the full picture on the reports. The report will the report will become even more complete once we import the club's assets. Right now, the balance sheet shows savings in liabilities, cash, loan receivables, and then the total assets. But the club also holds assets, and those represent real value that belongs to the group. Once the asset records are added, the reports will reflect the full financial picture: what the club has saved, what it has lent, what it holds, and what it has earned. We'll cover that in a later video. So at this point, the club is set up, the rules are in place, and the historical data is in the system. We'll be able to carry out our day-to-day operations, record new contributions, process loan applications, track payments, and generate reports on an ongoing basis. Thank you.